My name is Helena Brooks. I'm 30, and this was the year I decided my family would finally see me as something other than the punchline who always came up short. I saved all year for Christmas gifts. Every long shift, every weekend I skipped, every extra hour I picked up, I told myself it wasn't just about money. It was about walking into that living room and not shrinking. It was about proving, quietly, that I could be the daughter, the sister, the person who carried her weight. I didn't announce my plans. I just worked. Remote gig. I landed in March. Grueling hours, decent pay. I cooked at home, cut everything non-essential, drove my car on fumes, and told myself it would be worth it. I planned for months. Dad's bottle first. The Japanese whiskey he always hovered over in the store but never bought. Mom's gift second. A handmade leather bag almost identical to the one she kept saving and unsaving on Marketplace. For my brother, a solid smartwatch, not a knockoff. And for my sister, the high-end makeup brand she worshipped online, plus a salon gift card she'd actually use. A week before Christmas, I quietly paid $5,200 toward my brother's college tuition. No announcement. I just did it. I wrapped everything carefully, decent paper, clean corners, gift receipts attached. I wasn't expecting applause. I only wanted the room to feel different when I walked in. Christmas morning, I stepped into the same living room I'd known my whole life. Tree lit, carols floating, my sister live streaming like always. No one looked up. I set the gifts down, smiled, waited. Dad glanced at the whiskey and set it aside. No comment. Mom held the bag for 2 seconds, returned it to the box. My brother said, "Oh," at the watch. Just "oh," then added, "This one's not the newest model." And then my sister tore the paper from her box, pinched the makeup like it was sticky, and said, loud enough to stop conversation, "Cheap, as expected." Mom laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A full, delighted, "This is good" laugh. My brother snorted. Dad smiled into his cup. No one had wrapped a single thing for me, not even a card. I didn't say a word. Not about the gifts, not about the tuition. I just picked up the neat stack of receipts I'd left on the counter, just in case they wanted to exchange sizes or colors, and walked out. An hour later, I sat in a grocery store parking lot watching people push carts through cold air like they belonged to a better planet. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. "Don't be sensitive." I opened my banking app, found the tuition transfer, pressed reverse. The money slid back into my account faster than the heat could leave my face. It felt clinical, like removing a stitch that never healed right. At 11:03 p.m., the family group chat detonated. Messages in caps, typos, half scold, half performance. I skimmed and was about to mute the thread when a bubble from Mom lit the screen and took the breath out of me. "This is why Helena will always be a loser." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the quiet apartment I paid for and understood a thing I'd refused to understand before. They liked me small. They liked a version of me that apologized and borrowed and arrived last. A version that made them feel like a unit that could still close ranks. And I had ruined the equilibrium by trying to belong. I put my phone face down and let the room go still. Next year would be different. The days after Christmas were a silence I didn't fill. I didn't send a speech, didn't craft a dramatic goodbye. I just stopped replying. I blocked a few numbers and let the rest blur. No one apologized, not even a half-hearted, "maybe we were harsh." It was only a shift in tone, like the thread could roll backwards if we ignored it long enough. By New Year's Eve, I'd almost forgotten the texture of their laughter, how it warmed the whole room when the joke was me. I sat on the floor with a plate of microwave pasta and flipped between streaming fireworks and a nature documentary. No champagne, no party. Peace, which felt like a foreign country with clean borders. At 11:38 p.m., the buzz started. Missed call from Mom, 2 texts from my brother, 1 from my sister, then the group chat. "Call 911. Fire. Backyard is on fire. It's spreading. Helena, where are you? Please." A video arrived, shaky, dark, voices shouting under the rush of flame. The camera swung toward the backyard where a tower of fire roared over stacked boxes, fireworks cartons, cardboard, and something else. Propane? The flames licked up the siding, reached for the windows like fingers. It was seconds from swallowing the house whole. At 11:47 p.m., Mom again. "Helena, we need you, please." My phone vibrated against my palm, steady as a pulse. I could see the scene without being there. Dad performing, brother correcting, mom directing volume at anyone, everyone. No one thinking through the logistics of heat and dry winter wood and stacked fuel. It had blown up into the sky and come back down into their hands. For a split second, I pictured grabbing my keys, calling the fire department, becoming necessary. And then I replayed my sister's voice, cheap as expected, and mom's laugh. The reversal of the file of $200. The message that branded me with a word I refused to wear anymore. I set the phone on the couch and watched the second hand drag itself around the face of the clock. I didn't answer. I didn't forward the video. I didn't do anything but breathe. Around 1 a.m, I fell asleep. The next day, sunlight poured across my table like an apology no one could sign. I checked local news. Small residential fire. No fatalities. Minor injuries. House temporarily uninhabitable. They were lucky. The flames hadn't reached the bedrooms. They'd been outside, filming their show for the internet. I closed the article and made coffee. That should have been the end. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. No one rings my bell. On the other side of the door stood my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, lined up like a chorus after a bad rehearsal. Mom carried a casserole like penance baked at 375 degrees. My sister had 2 bulging trash bags. My brother held a grocery sack full of energy drinks and frozen sliders. Dad had a look I've known since childhood, the authority of a man who expects entry. I didn't invite them in. I just didn't move fast enough. They stepped past me like it was 2009, and I still had a twin bed pressed against a wall I didn't decorate. They put things down. They took seats. They vibrated with the comfort of people who assumed the answer was yes. Mom spoke first. "We're staying." I thought of 1,000 possible words, some sharp, some soft, some legal, but they stacked in my throat like traffic. I watched instead. The first night, they ordered pizza and logged into my streaming like they'd always had the password. "Just a few weeks while insurance sorts it out," Mom said, as if the sentence were a prayer. My sister decided the couch would hurt her back and took my bed. I moved into the office with a blanket and a pillow. The second morning, Mom told me we were low on eggs. Dad wanted Wi-Fi. My brother spread his console across the TV stand and started yelling at strangers through a headset. My sister wrinkled her nose. "It smells like someone who eats alone." I said nothing, not because I was weak, because I wanted to see how far they'd go if I didn't push. That night I texted Daniel, my boyfriend, "I'm okay. Don't come over tonight. I need to watch a thing play out." He offered to bring food anyway. I told him I had it covered. He didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. He just said, "I'm here. Call if you need me." A minute later, a notification I didn't want flashed. Sophie, Daniel's ex, posting a New Year's selfie with a caption about people who forget where they came from. It was nothing. It was everything. It sounded like a line I'd heard before, in a different room, wrapped in my mother's voice. I locked my phone. Then I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. I logged every expense spike. Groceries, electric, water, the things that don't say thank you when you pay them. I checked my lease, my name alone. I drafted a letter, not an email, not a text, a letter on paper, a boundary made visible. But that belongs to another part of the story. This part ends with something I didn't expect to feel so soon after the word loser, a steadiness. The kind that arrives when you choose not to perform your old role, no matter how loudly the room demands it. The first week with them in my apartment was a study in escalation. Little things, then bigger things, then things so casually outrageous they almost felt scripted. I woke up on the office floor with a kink in my neck and the taste of last night's silence in my mouth. My sister had arranged her hair tools across my nightstand like a shrine. Heat-proof mats, curling iron, straightener, a constellation of bottles promising impossible miracles. Somewhere between midnight and my alarm, my bedroom stopped being my bedroom. Mom moved through my kitchen with missionary zeal. She rearranged the cabinets, stacked spices by the logic of someone else's habit, tossed anything she didn't recognize. A jar of tahini hit the trash with a sentence about, "We don't eat this." My grocery list grew on a napkin I hadn't consented to. Eggs, milk, bread in block letters that didn't belong to me. Dad took the couch like a small kingdom. By the second afternoon, he'd claimed the remote and perfected the art of sleeping at a volume no human should achieve. My brother plugged in his console and announced, to no one and everyone, I got dibs at 7 for ranked. I didn't argue. I poured coffee and watched. My silence wasn't surrender. It was a ledger. Daniel texted mid-morning. I can swing by after work and help reset the kitchen. Not yet, I typed. I'm measuring the size of the fire. Okay. Lunch tomorrow? Tomorrow, I wrote and added, thank you. He sent a little thumbs up I shouldn't have found comforting, but did. By evening, my sister stood in the doorway of the office where I was actually doing the job that pays for walls and doors and electricity. Helena, she said, drawing my name out. Like a note she didn't want to hold. My back is still wrecked from New Year's. I tried the couch. It's a no. I looked at the screen. A spreadsheet. Numbers I controlled. The bed is yours for now, I said without looking up, but stop taking my desk chair. She laughed. You can work on the couch. I can work here, I said, gentle enough to pass, firm enough to land. She left with the chair anyway. The next morning, I bought a $15 folding chair from a thrift store and put it at my desk, a small humiliation I decided to put on the record. In the afternoon, my phone lit with a post from Sophie. New era, same values, her caption read. A mirror held up to a version of me I didn't recognize and also knew too well. She wasn't in my life. She was somewhere adjacent to it, close enough to see, far enough to deny she was looking. I closed the app. The apartment smelled like someone else's dinner. Mom caught me in the kitchen. We'll keep it tidy, she said, as if she were doing me a favor, as if tidiness were the price of being in my space, not the bare minimum of respect. Insurance says a week, maybe 2. It's just practical for us to be here. Practical, I echoed, and rinsed a plate no one had asked permission to dirty. I thought of the fire, the video, the heat scribbling across the siding where a decision had gone bad in seconds. I thought of the text at 11:47 p.m. that asked for a hero. I thought of not answering. Practical is a word that can smother a boundary while pretending it's being reasonable. On day 4, my brother handed me 2 takeout receipts. Can you just Venmo me? We're low till reimbursements. I looked at the total. The numbers felt like a dare. No, I said. Not cruel, not loud, just no. He blinked, like the word had a taste he'd forgotten existed, and shoved the papers into his pocket with a muttered whatever that tried to pretend it didn't sting. That night, I opened the spreadsheet and entered hard things. A column for extra groceries, for electricity, for water. A row for time, because time is always the thing that gets taken and never logged. I checked the lease again to soothe a quiet fear and felt the strange intoxication of the phrase, my name only. Then I drafted the letter. 4 paragraphs. Plain language. A notice that wasn't a threat. A boundary that wasn't a performance. I counted cash in an envelope and wrote rent start on the front with a pen that didn't skip. Before dawn the next morning, I taped the letter to the fridge where their eyes would land, whether they wanted them to or not. I slid the envelope into the top kitchen drawer and left the house before anyone could ask me to translate the words, effective immediately, into the language of their comfort. In the car, I let my breath catch up with my decisions. Daniel called. Talk to me, he said, in that voice he uses when he knows I'm careful with oxygen. I told him about the letter, the envelope, the math of it all. He was quiet for a beat. You want me there when you go back? I want to do this myself. I didn't say that I needed to see their faces without the prism of anyone else's reaction. I didn't say that part of me still believed if I did this right, I'd be ruined forever or saved forever, as if any moment held that kind of magic. Okay, he said. I'm here if you need me. And Helena? Yeah? You're not crazy. Maybe it's easier to stand up when someone whose hands you trust says your legs work. I worked from a coffee shop with bad chairs and good light and pretended the hiss of the espresso machine could drown out what the letter would sound like being read. At lunch, Sophie's name flashed across my screen again, tagging a friend in a story about relatives who forget who they were when they needed rides. I blocked her. I didn't tell Daniel, not because I was hiding anything, because I didn't want to make her a character in my scene. When I came home, the apartment was quiet in a way that suggested the noise had been moved inside bodies. Mom sat at the table with the letter in front of her like a test she couldn't memorize. Dad stared at the TV without turning it on, an old habit he used to make other people speak first. My sister had pulled every expression she possessed into the shape of disbelief. My brother handled the envelope like it might stain him. Mom started. Effective immediately? Yes. You can't be serious. I am. How are we supposed to find a place in 5 days? She didn't add when we're used to you absorbing our emergencies, but the line glowed in the space between us. I provided first month's rent, deposit, 1 week of food. The address of 3 complexes with openings is on the back. I had called them. I had asked questions no one had asked me when I needed something. I had made sure the door I was closing had another door behind it. Mom's mouth softened a fraction, then hardened. After everything, after the fire, after Christmas, I said, and watched the words find their mark. Dad's eyes flickered, and almost. The room changed its temperature just enough for me to notice. My sister scoffed, the sound teenagers make when they pretend to be immune to consequences and somehow never age out of. You're really going to throw us out like trash and feel good about it? I don't feel good. I looked at her, then at the letter. I feel clear. My brother tried reasonable. He's always been good at tone. Helena, we're family. This is just a rough patch. We are family, I said, and I've funded this rough patch for 3.5 weeks, in my home, with my utilities, with my food, with my patience, with my bed. This is not punishment. It's a boundary. Dad finally spoke, like a judge who'd arrived late and expected the room to reset. You're overreacting. I almost laughed. I didn't. No, I said, I'm responding. Mom pushed the letter away as if distance could change ink. This is cruel. It's final. She flinched at finals the way I had flinched at loser. Funny how one word can rearrange the furniture of an entire life. No one apologized. No one brought up the gifts. No one brought up the text that had branded me. They enumerated logistics instead. What about the dog sitter they couldn't afford anymore? What about the commute? What about the couch they'd ordered that hadn't come in, as if the universe owed them a cushion for every choice? I didn't argue the philosophy of it. I repeated the practical. 5 days. Cash provided. Listings included. After that, I pursue legal removal. My sister fired off a text to someone in front of me, thumbs stabbing indignation into the blue light. A minute later, my phone buzzed. A message from a mutual cousin I hadn't talked to in months. Everything okay? Heard your folks are having a hard time. Narratives travel faster than facts. I put the phone face down. That night, I slept in the office again. Not because I had to, because I wanted to remember what this cost. In the morning, I found Mom at the sink, washing a dish with unnecessary vigor. We're looking, she said without looking at me. Don't think you're the only one who can make a plan. I don't, I said, and poured coffee. I almost said I never did. But that's the thing about truth in families that prefer myth. You don't throw it like a rock. You let it sit like a cornerstone and build your house on it. Day 2. Daniel came over with groceries I hadn't asked for and flowers I didn't know how to accept without feeling like I was cheating on my own resolve. He put the vase on the counter, kissed my hair, and left before anyone could interpret his presence as an invitation to debate me by proxy. I wanted him to see I could hold the line alone. I wanted to know it too. Day 3. My sister cornered me in the hallway and whispered, "You're going to regret this," like a spell. I thought of the parking lot on Christmas, the word that cracked me open at 11:03 p.m., the way regret used to live in me like a roommate who never paid rent. Maybe, I said, but not today. On the morning of day 4, a letter arrived. Not from them. From the landlord. Routine building maintenance schedule. The universe has a sense of humor. I taped it beneath my letter on the fridge. My sister rolled her eyes so hard I worried for their safety. On the night of day 4, Mom hovered at my office door. Your father says we should talk. We are talking. I mean about everything. Then say everything. She didn't. She said nothing. She walked away. On the 5th day at noon, the apartment was empty. The bed was stripped. The couch cushions were skewed like someone had left in a hurry or never learned how to leave things better than they found them. A half-eaten sandwich sweated on the counter. The envelope that once held $2,000 held air. Relief didn't crash over me. It seeped, slow, suspicious, like a lake testing the shore. I cleaned. I returned the spices to their spots. I took my desk chair back from my sister's vanity and put the folding chair in the hall with a note, free. I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom and tried to remember owning it. That night, I slept in my own bed. I woke before dawn and listened to the kind of quiet that has weight. Somewhere between the fridge and the front door, I had traded the performance of peace for its practice. It felt less cinematic and more like the steady work of not letting chaos rent a room. On the table sat the letter I had written and kept a copy of for myself. I read it again, not because I doubted the words, but because I wanted to honor them. Boundaries are not electric fences. They are lines that keep gardens growing. I made coffee and poured it into my favorite mug, the one no one called cheap because no one else had touched it, and texted Daniel. "They're gone." He replied a minute later. "Proud of you. Dinner to celebrate?" "Tomorrow," I wrote. "Tonight, I'm going to sit in my own home and hear it breathe." Outside, the city moved through its morning choreography. Inside, I set the mug down, opened the window, and let the air in. It smelled like January, and something I didn't recognize yet. Maybe it was my life. It took me 3 full months to stop flinching whenever someone knocked on my door. 3 months since they left. 3 months since I taped that letter to the fridge and gave them cash, time, and mercy I didn't owe. 3 months since my apartment stopped echoing with voices that didn't respect the air they used. You'd think peace would return right away, like a light switch. It didn't. At first it was hollow. The quiet was too clean, like it was waiting for noise to stain it again. I'd wake up and listen for footsteps that weren't there. Sometimes I'd catch myself reaching for an extra plate before remembering there was no one to cook for but me. Still, day by day, the air changed. The kitchen smelled like coffee again, not someone else's dinner. The mirror over the sink reflected one face, mine, without commentary. I could hear myself think. I was rebuilding something invisible, my sense of safety, my right to say no without apology. And yet something in me still felt cracked open. They had taken a piece I didn't know could break. The part that still believed family, even at their worst, would eventually find humility. No one reached out. Not Mom, who'd laughed at my gifts. Not my sister, who'd called me cheap. Not my brother, who'd told me not to be sensitive after I paid his tuition. Not even Dad, who'd watched it all like a spectator, detached and calm. Nothing. The only updates came secondhand. Photos online, group selfies, captions about fresh starts, barbecues, Sunday brunch, new furniture. They'd moved into a small apartment across town, apparently using the $2,000 I'd given as their deposit. Mom posted something about new beginnings in our cozy little place. No mention of how they got that place. No acknowledgement of what it cost me. I didn't comment. Didn't send an emoji. Didn't even watch their stories. Silence can be armor if you wear it long enough. Then one Sunday afternoon, it arrived. An envelope. White, thick. My name written in blue ink I recognized immediately. My sister's handwriting. Dramatic, slanted, the kind she used when she wanted her words to feel important. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no date, just her voice on the page. "You didn't have to throw us out like trash. That's what everyone remembers now. Not Christmas, not the fire, just that you made your own family homeless. Yeah, maybe we messed up, but we're blood. And you chose to cut us off. You made your point, but people don't forget that. We're fine now. Better, actually. Even Mom's talking again. But she says if something happens to Dad before you two make up, that's on you. Anyway, just letting you know where things stand. No need to reply." At the bottom, she'd taped a return address sticker. A low-end complex across town. That was it. No name, no love, just guilt disguised as grace. I folded the letter and slipped it into the drawer where I kept old receipts and expired coupons. It didn't make me angry. It made me tired. Tired of how easily they rewrote stories. Tired of how blame always found a new costume. That night, Daniel came over. He cooked dinner. Simple pasta, garlic bread, salad. He didn't ask about the letter until I showed it to him. He read it quietly, then set it on the counter and said, "You don't owe them closure." "I know," I said, but a small part of me still wondered what closure was supposed to feel like. Maybe it wasn't peace. Maybe it was exhaustion that didn't hurt anymore. He reached for my hand. "Helena, they're trying to pull you back into their story." "I know," I repeated. He squeezed my hand once. "Then don't let them." After he left, I made tea and watched the city lights blur against my window. That letter sat heavy in the drawer. A week later, another knock came. This time, not from the door. From my phone. An unknown number. local area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but instinct won. Hello? A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months. My father's. He didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was, just said, flat and clipped, "We're going to need to talk soon," and hung up. No explanation, no follow-up, just that. A statement hanging in the air like an unfinished sentence. For days, I checked my phone expecting more. A text from Mom, a message from my brother, a guilt trip from my sister. Nothing. Only that one call, replaying in my head. Daniel asked if I wanted him to call my dad, to get context. I said no. If they wanted me, they knew where I lived. If they wanted forgiveness, they'd have to earn it. If they wanted control, they'd have to find someone else. A few days later, I broke my own rule and opened the family group chat for the first time since Christmas. Hundreds of unread messages. I scrolled to the bottom. That's when I saw it. A photo. My dad, in a hospital bed, IV line, pale light, Mom by his side wearing a tight smile that looked rehearsed. No caption. No hospital name. Then another message. From Mom. "Helena, you better not ignore this." I stared at the screen. Nothing else came through. No follow-up, no explanation. Just the expectation that I'd drop everything again. That I'd become the daughter they could rely on to rescue them when life got hard. I didn't reply. Didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't send prayers or flowers. I just tapped Leave Group. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to leave?" I pressed yes. And just like that, I was out. No one called. No one followed up. No one came to my door. Silence filled the space where guilt used to live. That night, I went for a walk by the river. The air was cold, sharp, honest. I looked at the water and realized something simple but terrifying. You don't lose family when you walk away from them. You lose illusions, the idea that they'll ever see you clearly. I whispered to myself, they don't need me. They need the version of me that says yes. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a villain for choosing peace. Weeks passed, and no one reached out. Not a single message, not even through mutual friends. It was as if leaving the group chat had erased me from their collective memory. For the first time, I felt the strange calm of being unneeded. Daniel came by more often, filling the space with something that wasn't family but still felt like home. He never pushed me to reconnect, never lectured me about forgiveness. He just sat beside me when silence was too loud, or brought dinner when I forgot to eat. One evening, I caught him staring at me across the table. "What?" I asked. He smiled softly. "You look lighter." I laughed a little. That's called finally breathing. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "You deserve it." For a moment, I believed him. But peace never comes unchallenged. A few days later, a notification appeared on my phone, a message request from Sophie, Daniel's ex. The preview showed only 3 words. "How's your dad?" My heart sank. I hadn't told her anything. I hadn't even told Daniel about the hospital photo. When I opened the message, there it was, a picture. The same one from the family group chat. My father in the hospital bed. Same angle, same lighting. Except this version had been cropped, filtered, and posted in Sophie's story 2 hours before my mother sent it. I froze. How did she have it? Why was she sharing it? And why, somehow, did it feel like my family's reach extended even into corners I thought were safe? I stared at the photo until the edges blurred. Then I blocked her without replying. But the damage was done. Sophie had become another conduit, another reminder that toxicity doesn't end just because you build a wall. Sometimes it finds new doors to knock on. When Daniel came by later, I didn't mention it. I didn't want to plant seeds of suspicion. He noticed the tension anyway. "Something wrong?" he asked. "No," I lied. "Just tired." The lie tasted familiar, like the kind I used to tell my family when I was breaking and didn't want to explain. Maybe healing isn't about learning new truths. Maybe it's about unlearning the lies that kept you small. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the old messages, the Christmas laughter, the word loser, the letter on my fridge. It all felt distant now, like a story that happened to someone else. And yet, the ache remained. The next morning, a voicemail notification blinked on my screen. It was from an unknown number, but I knew the voice immediately. Mom. Her tone was sugar over steel. "Helena, I don't know what you've told people, but your father is stable. Still, it's cruel that you didn't even check in. Family isn't something you quit when things get hard. Call me back. We need to talk. I didn't call. I didn't save the voicemail. I just deleted it. Because I finally understood. Their version of talk wasn't communication, it was control. Days turned into weeks. Life settled into rhythm again. I woke, worked, cooked, existed without explanation. And somewhere in that stillness, forgiveness began to feel less like a gift for them and more like freedom for me. But closure has a way of testing its own locks. One evening, Daniel's phone buzzed while we were cooking together. He looked at the screen, frowned, and set it face down. When I asked, he hesitated. "It's nothing," he said too quickly. I didn't press him. But later, while he was washing dishes, I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen, Sophie. Something inside me tightened. Not jealousy, recognition. Toxic people gravitate toward chaos like moths to fire. My family had burned me once. Sophie was just trying to light a smaller match. When Daniel noticed my silence, he sighed. "She reached out about your family," he said quietly. "Said she saw your dad's post, thought I should check on you." "She doesn't know my dad," I said. "I know," he answered, rinsing a plate. "I blocked her." And he did, right there, in front of me. No excuses, no explanations, just a simple act of solidarity that felt like healing. That night, I realized something. Love doesn't fix you. It just holds the light steady while you fix yourself. A few days later, I went through old boxes, birthday cards, photo albums, school ribbons. I found one photo of all of us together at Christmas years ago. We looked happy, or at least we looked like we knew how to pretend. I almost threw it away, but then I stopped. Not everything broken needs to be erased. Some things just need to be remembered correctly. I slipped the photo back into the box and wrote on the lid in marker, before I knew better. Then I slid it into the back of the closet, closed the door, and stood there in silence. It wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was release. By spring, the world had softened. The morning light hit my kitchen differently. The air didn't carry echoes anymore. It carried possibility. I'd found a rhythm that belonged only to me. Coffee, quiet, work, laughter that wasn't forced. Some nights, Daniel stayed over. We'd cook dinner, talk about plans, or say nothing at all. It felt safe, not perfect, but safe, and that was new. I hadn't heard from my family in months. The absence had its own kind of music. Then, one Sunday morning, the doorbell rang. It startled me. No one rang my doorbell, not since them. For a moment, I froze. Then I opened the door. It wasn't my family. It was my cousin Maya, the only relative who'd ever shown a trace of kindness. She stood on the porch holding a paper bag of groceries. "Hey," she said softly. "You look good." I smiled, cautious. "You too." She nodded, shifting the bag. "Mind if I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked in like someone carrying both good intentions and bad news. We sat at the table. She folded her hands. "I saw your mom last week," she said finally. "Okay." "She wanted me to tell you your dad's home now, doing better." "That's good," I said. She also said, "They miss you." I didn't laugh, but I wanted to. "Miss me?" I repeated. Maya looked at me, uncertain. "She said they talk about you a lot, that maybe you could visit sometime, clear the air." I leaned back in my chair. "The air's already clear," I said. "They just don't like breathing it." She sighed. "Helena, I'm not taking sides." "I know." "But family—" I stopped her gently. "Maya, don't finish that sentence." Her eyes softened. "They think you've changed." "I have." We sat in silence for a long minute. Finally, she stood. "Okay, I just wanted to deliver the message." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. She gave me a small smile. "You're not coming to Easter dinner, are you?" "No," I said, "but tell them I'm praying for them." It wasn't sarcasm. It was truth. She nodded, understanding. After she left, I stood by the window and watched her drive away. The street was quiet again, and that's when I realized something I hadn't before. Forgiveness doesn't always look like reunion. Sometimes it looks like peace that doesn't need witnesses. That evening, Daniel and I went for a walk near the pier. The sunset stretched across the water, orange fading to violet. He reached for my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Actually, I am." He smiled. "You sure?" For the first time in years. As we walked, I told him about Maya's visit, about the message from my mother. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he said, "You don't owe them another performance." "I know." He squeezed my hand. "Then don't audition." Later that night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city lights. I thought about everything: Christmas, the fire, the letter, the silence. I realized I hadn't lost a family. I'd lost an audience that never clapped for me. My phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. Just 2 words. "We're outside." My stomach turned. I stepped to the window. There they were. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, standing by their car at the curb. 4 silhouettes in the dark. No gifts, no smiles, just waiting. For a moment, I didn't move. I could have opened the door. I could have let them back in. But then I remembered Christmas morning, the laughter, the text, the word that broke me, and the quiet I had to fight for after. I turned off the porch light, sat back down, took another sip of tea. Through the thin walls of the city, I could hear faint knocking, soft at first, then louder. I didn't answer. Eventually, the sound stopped. When I looked again, the car was gone. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was earned. It was mine. I whispered into the stillness, "I forgive you, but I don't owe you my doorway." Then I closed my eyes and exhaled. For the first time, it felt like closure wasn't an ending. It was a beginning.